Important about the way we approached this grand jury was to make sure that nothing was put out ahead of time so we didn't influence the grand jurors that were going to hear the case. I know the Attorney General got a lot of criticism for not releasing the film ahead of time. When I met with the Crawford family, I told them that I supported that decision 1,000%, because I told them that even though the public at some point will have a right to see all of this themselves and to judge it for themselves, the only people that legally have a right to judge what happened that day was the grand jury, and I wanted them to be able to do it without any outside influences or pressure. So again, if anyone is critical of that decision, I also made that decision. Just a little bit about grand jury and regular jury. You know, a regular jury, at least in a felony case, has 12 jurors. In order to convict someone, you need all 12 of them to convict. In order to acquit, you need all 12 to acquit. Grand jury does not work that way. In fact, in a regular jury, if it's 11 to 1 or 1 to 11, it's a hung jury. You got to do it all over again. With the grand jury, first of all, there's only 9 jurors, and you need at least 7 to reach a verdict or to actually indict someone. If you 7, 8, or 9 of the grand jurors vote to indict a case, it's indicted. Any less than that, even if it's 6, then you don't have an indictment. So even though they don't have to be unanimous, it still can come down to 1 vote. Again, if 6 jurors out of 9 say a case should be indicted, it's not indicted. If 7 out of the 9 say it should be indicted, it is. The actual vote of the grand jury is never made public. It just is reported out whether they indicted the case or did not indict the case. In this case, over the last several days, the grand jury heard from 18 different witnesses. They heard hours of audio and video evidence. Anything relevant to the issue of whether the officer committed the crime of either murder or reckless homicide or negligent homicide, and the grand jury was given the option to indict on any of those, or was the shooting justified. Any evidence related to that was presented to this grand jury. And I cannot say what the vote count was, but at the end of all that testimony, the grand jury deliberated and they returned no indictment. They decided that the police officers, and the police officer in particular that fired the shots, was justified in doing what he did. Because of the grand jury secrecy, I cannot say or not show you everything that was shown to the grand jury. But as I said, all relevant evidence was presented to the grand jury, and at this point, I would like to share with you some of the relevant evidence that came up during this investigation. Matt, can you hit that light switch? Thank you. This first thing is, and what I had asked, there's a couple key players in this situation. There's the 911 caller, there's Mr. Crawford, there's Angela Williams, who was a customer in the store that, because of all the tension and stress, actually died of a heart attack that day, and there's the police officers. We're going to start with 7:44 that evening. There's a purple dot. This is when the 911 caller arrived. He's the first person to arrive. You can see there's a little purple dot right down in this area. Okay. The next significant event is at 8:09. Now the 911 caller's already been in the store for some time. At 8:09, Mr. Crawford arrives. He is indicated by the green dot. Again, he is down here, and at this point you can see the 911 caller is up in the back of the store. We'll proceed through these slides. You can see where Mr. Crawford is moving throughout the store, where the 911 caller is moving throughout the store. It's now 8:15. Both of these individuals totally oblivious to each other. At this point, Mr. Crawford is back near where they sell guns, and right at this point, and it's indicated because the green dot represents him, at this point he has picked the gun off the shelf back in the weapons department of the store, and you can see at this point our 911 caller is over in this part of the store, Angela Williams is not even in the store yet, and obviously the police officers have not been summoned to the store yet. See the movement again of Mr. Crawford, and he now has the gun, and this is where he and the 911 caller, he actually passes the 911 caller. It's now 8:21. Mr. Crawford now proceeds down to the pet area, and the 911 caller, can you back up just a couple of slides? Okay, one slide. At this point, 8:21:40, the 911 call has not been made. At 8:22, the 911 caller is now on the phone. He is up in this area. He is looking at Mr. Crawford down in this area of the store. Again, Angela Williams is not there yet, nor are the police. You can see now Angela Williams at 8:22:50 has arrived in the store, and you can follow her path. Mr. Crawford is basically going to stay where he was. The 911 caller is getting closer as he's on the phone to say more to the dispatcher. You can now see Miss Williams has come into the area right where Mr. Crawford was. In fact, she's within maybe 10 or 15 feet of him along with her family. At this point, back up a couple, Justin. Okay, go ahead. Okay, it is now 8:26. The police officers are just arriving and entering the Walmart store. Police officers are making their way over to Mr. Crawford. At this point, the shots are fired. The 911 caller is still on the phone with the police at this point. So that's just a little bit of overlay that I was curious about where these various parties interacted. That's just one explanation of what happened that day in the store. Second thing we would like to play for you is the radio traffic. One of the things significant and one of the things under the law, if you're deciding whether a shooting is justified, is what is in the mind of the police officer.
Hey Mark, could you kind of stay by the microphone just a little bit closer?
I'm sorry, I don't do this for a living. So. I'm used to talking to a jury, so you're out here acting up a little bit. So. This is the radio traffic, and what I was just saying, it's significant because the law says that the police officers are judged on what is in their mind at the time. This is some of the communications that was given to the police that afternoon. And again, the way it works, the 911 caller calls communications, they call the officers. There's no direct contact between the 911 caller and the police officers. This one?
Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you. 113 and 96 for weapons complaints. Section 4696.
113 on bail, walking out, walking out.
Thank you.
You take that.
3360 on Boulevard, Walmart, a black male, 6 foot, wearing a blue shirt, blue pants, in the back section, holding a gun, pointing.
Yeah. 46 October address.
2023.
90, I'm at Walmart. You say pointing at people?
Affirmative, maybe he's in the back section.
Just somebody put an eye on them?
Affirmative, I have a gentleman who's watching them as he's waving it around, believes it's a rifle. We see just put some bullets inside.
Score. Scott me up first, okay.
They're advising he's in the back corner of test.
96, 37.
2025.
46 is low.
2026.
815, myself, 117, 37.
2026.
Which corner of the store? I just have these shots fired. Start an ambulance.
You're clear, 2027.
760 to 71 contact 27 for you.
I apologize if that's my phone. Probably is. Again, some of the things in the phone call are there's a man in the store with a rifle. He's loading the rifle. He's pointing it at people. At one point, the officer even calls back to the dispatcher to confirm, are you sure he's pointing it at people? And they confirm, yes, that's what the caller says. He's pointing it at people. One of the things, again, a question I have, and I think a jury would have, is how are the officers trained to deal with a situation like that? And ironically enough, less than 2 weeks before this, the Beavercreek Police Department was given training on how to deal with an active shooter situation. An active shooter situation is one where you have someone who has actually shot at people or is threatening to do so. These are just some of the slides from that training. Again, these officers received this on July 23rd and 24th of this year. This is created by OPATA, which is the Ohio Police Officer Training Association, in conjunction with the FBI manual on how are police supposed to confront a situation like this. What to do when you're first on the scene. It's almost like, to me, a pep talk for police officers. You have to go after these things. You can't ignore them. In fact, these are actual slides from this. You shouldn't be saying, this is a bad day to be a cop. You should be saying, this is why I'm a police officer. You know, it's one thing to write tickets and everything else, but most police officers take an oath, all of them take an oath to protect the citizens. This is one of the few times you're actually called in to do it. What is an active shooter? How is that defined? An active shooter is one or more subjects who have used or are threatening to use a weapon to inflict deadly force on others, continue to do so. Prior actions demonstrate whether or not they want to commit harm. Okay. When is deadly force justified? And this really mirrors the Ohio law. An officer acting within the scope of his duties is justified in using deadly force either to defend himself or someone else from what is reasonably believed to be an imminent threat of harm. And that was really the question for this jury. Looking at everything, was the officer reasonable in thinking that either himself or someone else was going to receive death or serious bodily harm? What's also interesting is the way the police have been taught to approach these situations over the years. Prior to 1999, the police were told to respond, circle the building, make sure no one went in or out, and wait for SWAT to arrive. Once SWAT arrived, they would try to negotiate the situation. The situation changed from 1999 to 2008, after we started to have some of these massive school shootings and so forth. The police were taught to aggressively go in, but wait until you had at least 3 or 4 officers there, because they were looking out for the officer's safety. Well, the FBI realized that wasn't working, because in that 5 or 10 minutes they're waiting for other officers to arrive, people are dying. So they changed it in 2008, and this is what the current practice is. Even if you're a single officer, you should go in there. The failure to wait for, or the waiting for backup, is going to cost lives, and in almost every case, if you confront the shooter, the killing of civilians will stop. They also state that this is why you cannot wait. That the average event, if you've got a terroristic threat or an active shooter, it's going to last 3 to 4 minutes. Every 15 seconds, someone's going to be shot, and the average law enforcement response time is 5 minutes. So they're basically told, you got to get in there now and you've got to confront it. These are what their priority is now. Remember, this suspect wants a body count. He's not expecting you to respond quickly. Again, they're told, if you locate him, engage him, close with him, you have to be aggressive, you have to be fast. The faster you neutralize the suspect, the less time he has to harm innocent civilians. Again, to me, the importance of this is how these officers are taught to react to these situations, and it's something, to me, you need to take into account. Question posed to the officers: what would you want if one of your loved ones is in a building where there's an active shooter? Wait outside for more officers, or get in there and neutralize the threat as fast as you can? And again, the police expectations of themselves should be no different from the public. And they basically end with telling them, and they use Sandy Hook as an example, 20 children and 5 adults are killed. If not you, then who? Were the police facing such a situation here? No. Did they know that? No. They're told, we've got a guy in here with a rifle, he's loading the rifle, and he's pointing it at people. Next thing I'd like to show you are some the actual videos from the store that captures Mr. Crawford in the store and the shooting itself. This is the vehicle of Mr. Crawford arriving at the store. This is Mr. Crawford. You'll see him just walking down the aisle. He's on the phone at the time. This is the gun case, the gun area. You'll see Mr. Crawford walk down this aisle and really without stopping, reach out, pick up this rifle, and continue walking. And this rifle is the pellet gun that originally was in a box, but someone else, not Mr. Crawford, at least we don't believe it was him, had previously opened the box, taken the gun out, and laid it on top. Again, Mr. Crawford still on the phone, carrying that rifle in his left arm. And a number of people in the store noticed him, talked to people in the store about it. One of the store clerks actually called a manager to report that there's a guy walking around with a rifle. I don't know if it's real or not, but I'm afraid it might cause a panic. Somebody better get to him and tell him to put it away. And the Walmart people were in the process of doing that when the police arrived. And we did our best to track, and that circle just shows, again, Mr. Crawford walking from the gun case all the way to the back corner of the store, all the way back to, it was really close to the entrance that would go out to the garden center of the store. The 911 caller at this time is back in this area. Mr. Crawford will keep walking to this corner of the store. This is the garden center store. Mr. Crawford, again, that's him walking by. At this point, he's got the gun on his shoulder. And at this point, we're going to stop this video and we're going to jump to another video, because this is when the 911 call is coming in, and actually the FBI was able to sync the audio from the 911 call to the movement in the store. You can see Mr. Crawford is in this area, and at some point you'll see the police officers arrive from this area, and they would be looking down this aisle here. This area right here would be back in here. The police will come in like this and look around this corner at Mr. Crawford. This is what the 911 caller is seeing. Now you'll hear him on the phone the same time this is going on.
Beavercreek 911, where's your emergency?
I'm at the Beavercreek Walmart, sir. The gentleman walking around with a gun in the store.
Is he got it pulled out?
Yeah, he's like pointing at people.
What does he look like?
He's a black male, probably about 6 foot tall.
Okay. What's he wearing?
Blue shirt, blue pants.
Where's he at now?
He's over in the tent.
Can I have your name, please?
My name is Ronald Ritchie.
Ronald.
Yeah, he's like loading it right now.
All right. right, Mr. Ritchie, hold on 1 second, okay?
No,
Still on the phone with you, this is fair form, but they're probably sending somebody.
okay,
So I'm just gonna stay on the phone with you.
okay.
What's he doing now?
He's just trying to load it.
He's just trying to load it?
Yeah.
In from. Okay. Was he still in the test area?
Yeah.
Okay. What's he loading it with? Do you see?
I have no idea. I'm not getting that close to
Okay,
it.
that's fine. Has he got people that he's pointing around now?
I can't tell if there's anybody who's pointing it out right now, but it looks like he's like hitting his thing.
Okay.
The caller's about 100 feet away down this aisle.
Okay, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Where is he at now?
He's still on that section, just looks like, I don't know what he's trying to do. He's just like pointing.
2023. This is Sarah Warren. I'm still on the line. You guys need help? Affirmative, maybe he's in the text section. Beavercreek. It's Sarah Warren. You guys need any help that way? Not yet. Okay. Thank you. Stay on the line. I let my sergeant know just in case. Thank you. You're welcome. Okay, sir, tell me what's going on now.
I don't know what he's just like looking around, waving it back and forth.
Okay. Sir, what type of gun is it? Is it a shotgun or is it a handgun?
It looks like a rifle.
What color? Is it the black white rifle?
Yeah.
Alright, you said you saw him loaded?
He looked like he was trying to load it. I don't know.
Affirmative, the gentleman who's watching us said he waved it around, believes it's a rifle, which he just put some bullets inside. I have an officer there.
You know, they're
I still have another officer on
in
scene.
the back corner of Pets right now.
Blackmail, they're very close in the blackmail corner of Pets. He's a blackmail, what's he wearing?
Black shirt and blue jeans.
Okay, the blackmail, black shirt and blue jeans.
Yeah.
Does he have a hat or anything on?
You know, he's got like an afro.
An afro? Okay. Big freak to get that. I got it, have an
I guess
afro.
we,
What do you think, sir?
my name is Ron Ritchie. He just wanted like 2 children.
Okay, I do have officers there, so stay on the line with me, okay?
My right.
2025. Is there anyone else around him? That came with him that you can tell?
It's just him.
Just him?
Yeah.
Okay. What's he doing now?
He's just waving it around still.
Do you think he's pointing at other kids?
Right.
Okay, is there kids around him then?
Not anymore.
Okay. Is there anyone around him now?
We just so you know what's coming up next, because this is going to be the significant portion. You will see the officer's feet come up in this area. Mr. Crawford is still here. At some point, the one officer pivots. The only audio that exists is the little bit that can be picked up on this 911 call, and it's really faint because the caller at that point, like I say, is about 100 feet away from where this is happening. 2 shots will be fired at Mr. Crawford. You'll see him go to the ground and then disappear behind this end cap. The officers are unsure whether he's even shot or not at that point, but he disappears. It's like 2 seconds later, he reappears and is coming. He has dropped the gun at that point. He actually reappears and he appears to be running back down this aisle. The officer is only within about 5 or 10 feet of him at that point. Even though he's coming towards him, he does not fire additional shots. He's got like a 28 magazine rifle at the point. So he fires 2 shots. Mr. Crawford appears to fall to the ground, go around the corner, the rifle is dropped, and then as the officer continues up this aisle, you'll see Mr. Crawford reappear, but no further shots are fired. So just so you're prepared, that's what's coming next. And the officers will be coming in from here. Mr. Crawford will be shot, disappear. Can you turn that off, please? Thank you. Okay.
So your kid wants to hear me. So I'll leave the way.
Okay. 2026.
So we could
2026. Hey, what's going on?
something short.
We have cut away from that video because we obviously don't want to show the moment Mr. Crawford is shot, so that's why you're seeing this video here.
And they actually put tourniquets on the arms of Mr. Crawford. There are 2 shots fired. We don't know which shot struck Mr. Crawford first. One went through the left elbow and out the left elbow. The other one went through the side of Mr. Crawford. It was slightly front to back, as if I'm facing you, slightly turned towards that, slightly front to back, but basically straight across. The most serious organ that it damaged was the liver, but it was a catastrophic injury. It was a non-survivable injury. One of those 2 bullets ended up actually then exiting the body, we're not sure which, and went through the other elbow of Mr. Crawford. Last thing we'd like to show you is it's a side-by-side view again, but it's kind of a frame-by-frame view of this same incident, the key part of the incident.
Again, we're cutting away because we do not want to show that moment that Mr.
Crawford
was shot. So we'll show you just some video here to cover that moment.
The screen will go black just because they could not sync up the time exactly. Nothing significant happens during that time, but it's the same side-by-side video, but it is a frame-by-frame reenactment of it. You can see it in a moment. Mr. Crawford will look to crouch. The gun will come up a little bit. If you can go back 2 slides, Justin. There's an area right here, if you can go frame by frame, right there, a flash appears. No one knew what caused that. The thought was that might have been caused when the officer fired the shot. It might have been some reverberation that caused that to happen. You heard of a reenactment that was done. The reenactment was done to try to see if they could reproduce that flash, to see if that would pinpoint when the gun was fired. So Walmart, who's been very cooperative through this whole thing, allowed a prosecutor and detectives to go back into the store one night at 3 o'clock in the morning to have the same gun the officer used fire into a bullet trap and have that being filmed and see if that same flash was reproduced. Again, the thought was if that same flash appeared, they could say that was the exact moment the gun was fired, but that same flash did not reappear. But that was the purpose of this. If you'll watch the left foot of this officer, as we go frame by frame, right there, if you go back 2 frames, he's standing there, and we believe that that was a flinch caused by the shot being fired, and that's the best estimate. The one officer had pivoted around, is actually the one firing the shot. That is the position of Mr. Crawford at that point. Again, we tried the best we could to try to determine the relative position of these 2 people when the shot was fired. You can see the gun is dropped. Again, Mr. Crawford disappears for a moment. The officer will close on him. And again, no more shots were fired at that point. Again, we cannot legally tell you everything that was presented to the grand jury, but we tried our best to show the grand jury everything. You know, this was really a perfect storm of circumstances. I think if any one of those wasn't present, none of us would be here today. The first is that pellet gun being out of the box. These are sold in a box. You can't leave Walmart without the gun in its box. Again, someone, for whatever reason, had taken the pellet gun out of the box earlier. Second circumstance is, you know, Mr. Crawford is just kind of aimlessly walking around the store. He walked down that aisle, saw that gun, and for whatever reason decided to pick it up and carry it with him. The gun resembles very clearly an automatic weapon. A lot of people have called this a toy. One of these is a real gun. One of these is the gun Mr. Crawford was carrying that day. As you can see, it's very hard to tell the difference, especially if you're 100 feet away, whatever away. The pellet guns and the BB guns, it's not like the Red Ryder you might have had as a kid. These are now designed to look like the real McCoy. This is a real automatic rifle. This is the rifle that Mr. Crawford was carrying that day. But again, that is a circumstance you have to weigh into this. The fact that Mr. Crawford is on a cell phone. Again, none of this, it's anything he's doing wrong, but like most people on a cell phone, after a while, you become distracted. And he probably, I even told his family at one point, he probably didn't realize he's still carrying that gun. And maybe that's why when he's talking on the phone, he's swinging it from time to time. The fact that the 911 caller is familiar with guns. You know, a lot of people in that store, as we're watching this video, they don't even notice Mr. Crawford. They just walked right by him. But the 911 caller, and again, he's trying to be a good citizen, reporting as best he can what he's seeing. He calls up. If he's not there that day, we may not be here. You know, the officer training 2 weeks prior. It's good training. It's what they're taught. But just 2 weeks before this, they're told, if you got a situation like this, you got to bust your tail and get in there and confront it. And I think the final circumstance, he's still on the phone when these officers confront him. He's probably not paying attention to what he's doing, and this happens. I know from experience that no officer wants to be in a situation where they're putting their lives on the line and they're possibly going to have to take the life of someone else. And I'm sure if Walmart would have announced over the public speaker that day the same information that the police officers were given, we want to let all our customers know that there's a man in here with a rifle, he's loading it, and he's pointing it at people. Everyone in that store, including Mr. Crawford, would have stampeded out of there. Yet we expect our police officers to not only not run from those situations, but to run towards those situations. And their split-second decisions in confronting these type of situations are not a crime unless based on all the circumstances, a jury believes that they were unreasonable in what they perceived that day and the way they reacted to it. And even the Supreme Court of the United States says you can't judge this sitting at home on a Sunday afternoon, drinking a beer, watching the Bengals. You have to put yourself in their shoes at that time with the information they had. And again, that's what was given to the grand jury. The grand jury listened to all the evidence, voted on it, and decided that the police officers were justified in their use of force that day. You know, our job, this is Stacy DeGraffenreid, she was side by side with me in all of this. It's normally very easily because Usually in our cases, it's good versus evil. And it's good to be a prosecutor because you're always representing the good guy. A lot of our cases these days are actually evil versus evil because a lot of our cases have degenerated into one bad guy killing another bad guy. And it doesn't make it right, but again, we don't have to deal with a situation where you have to deal with here where you really don't have a bad guy. You know, Mr. Crawford did not commit any crime that day. I don't know why he carried the gun like he did, but again, as we told his parents, he didn't commit a crime. He didn't do anything wrong. At the same time, the police officers have to be judged on everything they had. All I can say about this case, it's a tragedy. It's a tragedy for the Crawford family. It's a tragedy for the family of Angela Williams, who died because of all the stress and commotion from this. And it's also a tragedy for the police officers who has to live the rest of their lives knowing that even though they had a justified use of force, they took the life of someone that didn't need to die. That's basically what we have to say about this case.